Hello, everyone, and welcome to Marijuana Monthlies. My name is Chelsea Higgs Wise. I'm the Executive Director of Marijuana Justice and organizer with the Virginia Canna Justice Coalition. Today is May the 1st. I'm so sorry. Today is June the 1st. It's been a long day, as you will hear about just a little bit. The year is 2022. And I'm here to really just kind of welcome you back to the space if this is a return place for you or if it's your first time. And to remind everyone that we are really here about repealing the prohibition, repairing our communities, and bringing reparations by reinvesting the revenues from adult use sales. In this place, we believe that abolition is actually the answer. And we participate in legalization to create a path of harm reduction as the same people who created weed prohibition now attempt to legalize it. And they're doing it with promises to center the war on drugs. But we know that reform will actually never bring us the liberation that we need. So we, Marijuana Justice, are here to remind everyone that we still have almost 600 people still incarcerated right here in Virginia prisons. And not to mention the people that are also engaged in the local jails and people that are under community supervisions with things like ankle bracelets because of weed crimes. So while we acknowledge there is a need to free the most impacted all the time, I'm also here to deliver the frustrating, the heartbreaking, and really the enraging news that Virginia has taken a step back and we have recriminalized marijuana possession. So it just happened today. They had the budget hearings, and this is not final. What this means is that what happened today, which I'll talk about in just a second, is being sent up to the governor, and Governor Youngkin has up to 1 week to veto, amend, or sign. And then we could possibly be back. Who knows? But we are here to continue to inform the community about what's going on. And again, remind everybody why it's important of legalization, something that's going to be one time in our lifetime once they open the doors, particularly for adult use sales, and what that means for our communities moving forward. So we know that this is an important issue to everyone in our community and just really appreciate for you engaging in this space. So here we go. Effective July 1st, a person in Virginia is at risk to receive a Class 3 misdemeanor for possessing 4 ounces up to a pound. And if caught from 4 ounces to a pound, you could get a Class 2. A Class 3 misdemeanor. And on the subsequent offense, which means anytime after that, after the first offense, it could be a Class 2 misdemeanor, which both come with fines, and that Class 2 can also come with jail time. I'm seeing Jordan saying that reform is never the answer we need. I just want to say I'll share to that. Also what's coming up with these new crimes that were just put in the budget today that seem very likely to pass with the governor and to be in effect July 1. It means that anyone convicted with these crimes, just like it has meant up until 2020, when we really took a big step forward, is that someone will then have to experience the collateral consequences up to 7 years because of these crimes on their records. That means barriers to housing, education, employment, as well as risks for deportation. And we know now that we did just pass this historic legislation in 2021 about record sealing, or a lot of people know it by expungement. There's just a little bit nuances in the details there. And so it is going to be automatically sealed after 7 years starting in 2025. But that's still 7 years too long. We know that any of these crimes are going to be disproportionately enforced on Black people. So these crimes are what's going on right now. Also, in this new budget proposal around cannabis, they had some proposals around hemp. I'm going to talk about why I'm even bringing that up on this show. And I don't usually talk about that because we have so much to talk about, but particularly in this bill. So within the hemp, they're also including with hemp, as well as just cannabis moving forward, requiring child safety locks on edible packaging, regardless where it's sourced. And in this hemp piece, they are putting an overall restriction now on 21 and up. So as of right now, it's 18 and up. That is usually the standard across the nation, and CBD is 18 and up. So that is something else that people are really upset about, because essentially I feel like they will have to create criminal penalties for people possessing that if it's for 18 and up. 21 and under possessing that. So that did not come out this time. But again, we have to understand how the system works and is just set up to create these new crimes if we're not here to defend it every step of the way. And then there's also an establishment of a task force. And this task force will review commercial market and how to set up regulations. And they have to actually have a report due November 15th of this coming year. And that will inform the legislation for 2023 and what that looks like. So that is kind of what this budget amendment includes. And so I just want to say that there are several reasons why we oppose this. But first, I really want to address how these crimes were passed. So a refresher is that our Canna Justice Coalition organized an alert to let the public know about these new crimes, not once, not twice, y'all, but now this is 3 times in 2022 because of all the attempts that advocates are really making somehow in the General Assembly. Sorry about the notifications, y'all. So in February, we held a press conference about delivering a letter. And then we also, that letter had 40 organizations nationwide and across Virginia to sign on for no new crimes and to legalize it, right? And in April, we also delivered a petition for no new crimes. And this past week, it seems like our legislative body really just kind of fell to their knees and gave in to criminalization advocates because we had held the line so long. All session, we had voted no. So let's really now talk about why these crimes are bad. So these misdemeanors, we talk about it all the time, but they are really have and will continue to target young Black and brown people in Virginia. Disproportionately, over 50% of the possession offenses were categorized as young Black people. And so we have to understand that how that is looking in the age of 18 to 24, you were most disproportionately targeted for marijuana possessions. That's old data that really informed us to take these steps the last couple of years, but apparently that didn't continue to come up. But now with these new crimes coming back, people are like, well, what does this mean? And this is something that our partners, Justice Forward Virginia, talk about a lot. But now with these new crimes, even though they cannot necessarily stop, search, or seize because of the smell of marijuana, what happens now is that they could see marijuana. They were like, oh, well, I'm going to arrest this person. And now I don't know what 4 pounds looks like. And it's just an opportunity to go in and weigh it. And, you know, this just means that it's just more disproportionately searches and charges on Black people, because that's what these crimes have always had the impact with. And so, as I mentioned before, that we still have to wait 7 years for these types of deferral dismissals that'll be automatically sealed in 2025. And I will say that the General Assembly, some of the members tried to make this less time than 7 years this past session, but of course that didn't go through. So I think it's something else that I want to really just talk about too, is because everyone's like, well, Chelsea, 4 ounces is a lot. And I think it's important because people are automatically thinking about 4 ounces of smoking it by consumption. And I think that's also because when we start talking about cannabis and criminalization, we think about how cannabis has been criminalized, and that's by picturing a Black person smoking it. But honestly, what I am also learning, and what I hear from a lot of folks that are engaging with Touching in the Plant and creating many things and wellness products and things for themselves, is that 4 ounces is not a lot when you're using it for wellness, when you're using it for edibles and tinctures and extracting the oil. And if people saw someone that was diagnosed with a chronic disease and had 4 ounces, that is accepted. But now when you start, you know, again, putting it next to criminalization, then we're like, oh, well, that's just too much. You shouldn't have that. And it is not criminalized within the home, which is good, but it is still this gray area of, well, I have to get it to my home. You know, well, who's home? Maybe I don't have a stable, secure home in the way that many people might describe. So we have to really just continue to interrogate how these new misdemeanors will impact community. And I guess this is like the larger question too, of just access to cannabis, right? We always talk about the criminalization, but the criminalization also means the barriers to access to weed for health, for wellness for us, right? And that's a conversation we really want to continue to have as we talk about what the plant can do for us, but what it means when we have these barriers. So I'm going to take a quick moment and just hydrate. I encourage everyone to stay hydrated right now in this moment. It's been a long day. Whew. Thank you for anyone that was watching along in committee today on the floor. It was a lot. The next real piece of what was created, as well as the new crimes with the possession marijuana crimes, is the different hemp pieces. Again, I talk about the hemp right now, because it's still going to fall under the Cannabis Control Authority. And however, hemp is also criminalized. Guess where that is also criminalizing us? One second. Mercury's retrograde is also just, we're back. So I was mentioning the Cannabis Control Authority, and particularly also in the future once they're set up, and they are continuing to invest in the Cannabis Control Authorities set up in the budget. So that is still happening. But what that means is that we have to continue to see how the CCA will set up certain regulations that will then lead to certain enforcement. So right now, when we're looking at the 21 and up only of the CBD products, something I just want to repeat from what I've heard from a lot of growers and wellness practitioners and advocates, that raising the CBD age to 21 really denies young people this health access to their non-intoxicating medicine, right? That's why CBD advocates are saying that it doesn't need to be restricted from people under 21, from 18 to 21, because of its non-intoxication. And it's also this, like I mentioned before, will eventually lead to more criminality. And because we have to understand that everything is limited. And so we're just creating more barriers to access. And I think that we always talk about recreational use. And that term has, again, created the ability for us to criminalize certain people using it, because it's like we're just using it for fun. It's just to get high. But this is always a wellness tool for us to cope. And I think that we also have to make sure that we aren't repeating those certain types of narratives that have continued to allow that criminalization by separating us. And finally, I want to just also talk about the task force that was created for commercial cannabis. And they have that report that's due out November 15th. Last year, after it was legalized, they put together a commission of legislators, and they oversaw the recommendation that got us here, which, let me tell you, that wasn't a great proposal. We opposed all of them. But they met monthly, and it was legislators. Well, this time they have put together a task force. They have not completed and sat every one of this task force, but it will include the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, the Office Attorney General, the Department of Forensic Sciences, the Cannabis Control Authority, and other stakeholders as determined by the Secretary of Agriculture and Forestry. And of course, Public Safety and Homeland Security is also overseeing that. So we're also taking a shift from a commission by legislators, elected officials, to now a task force with appointees, and then, other people that have yet to remain named. So we will also keep you updated throughout the summer and what those proposals look like and how transparent that process is, or if it isn't at all. And that is really something else I just wanted to bring up tonight. And Evan in the back, I'm not here by myself. You might not see them, but Evan's in the back helping us out today. If you don't mind dropping in the chat the article from the Outlaw that just came out, that talks a little bit about what happens today, but also really focuses on the non-transparency that happened throughout this process and how this came about. Again, I mentioned that we had already voted this down twice. There is this whole quote unquote democratic process of, we elect these people, they have to go through a process and vote at a chamber. And it was really unprecedented that we are literally creating crimes in a budget document. And again, that just shows me the commitment to criminalization advocates to get their way and create their own rules. And why I said at the beginning that abolition is really the only way that we're going to get us free. And we have to do the least harm as possible and remove the money from law enforcement and make sure that this is going other places. But as you can see, there are many people that have other motives in mind. So I know I've said a lot. If you have any questions, you can feel free to throw them in the chat. You can also always hit us up at info@marijuanajustice.org, no matter when you are watching this. We really are continuing to do this fight. And I know this just happened today, so there's probably more that might come out once it is actually signed. And again, the governor has 1 week to amend and to veto or sign anything. So when we come back in July with our really exciting guests, we'll talk more about what actually happened and what passed. And we will be continuing right here to see what's going on and support us, support you in any kind of way that we can. And by us, I just mean community and our people. So, tonight we have something a little bit different than just a regular, one-on-one speaking, me speaking with someone. And I'm really excited to say that we're featuring an emerging filmmaker and Broadway Advocacy Coalition Artivism 2022 Fellow. Their name is Jasmine Leeward, as they host a conversation with producer Janae Thompson, digital content creator TJ King, spoken word artist Janae LaShawn, and choreographer Christine Wyatt around the role of art and storytelling in Black resistance. So before this esteemed panel, we're going to actually screen the premiere of Jasmine's short film collaboration with Marijuana Justice and the Canna Justice Coalition, and it's called Free Our Families, a choreo poem of resistance. Enjoy the short and subsequent panel discussion, and we'll be here for any questions afterwards.
And is subject to monitoring and recording. Thank you for using GTL.
My name is Ramon Brown. I have 9 years and 7 months for possession with intent of marijuana. I have 7.5 years from the probation violation, and the rest of the time came for the marijuana charge itself. First major violation, and I mean, it's just the time that they gave me for something that's found to be legal in the state of Virginia because of the section that I'm in Virginia. Different parts of Virginia have different rules and how they sentence people depending on the court, inner city or rural area. So I wasn't in the inner city. I was Augusta County, Rockingham area. So I felt like I got more time because I'm in a rural area since 2018, June 3rd, 2018. It funded me and my family for the sake of I could do things for my family that I wasn't able to do prior because of my prior convictions that stopped me from getting employment in certain places. So, I mean, a lot of people look at it like, you don't do things, you're lazy, you're whatever. But, I mean, I funded my daughter's dance classes, my daughter's softball, my son's softball, school programs. I mean, everything. Like I funded a lot of, and I took care of my household. And I was there at the games. I was there at the functions. I was there at the graduations and all that stuff. But I don't know. It's just people seem to demonize it for the people that's locked up for just marijuana. I think the sentencing and what they're given is over the top.
Dear Daddy Letters. Dear Daddy Letters was the wallpaper of my father's world for 9 years and 7 months. And for every write back, we shared promises, plans, and unbreakable pacts. We redefined our normal as daughter and dad. Not by choice, but by systematic circumstances curtailed by capitalism for 3,495 days. Not one passed where my pen didn't paint with pain from my dear daddy. Not one call that wasn't highlighted in hope. We figured out how to make simple traces of our existence impossible to erase. Unbound, liberated, free. To live fully beyond survival, dancing outside the margins. More than numbers and targeted sections designed to feed a system of new age enslaved bodies, robbing us fully of tangible living. Over time, the time to be exact, 83,880 hours of our time, our lifetime, rips out the seams of souls over time, over time, over time, over time, over time, over time. Dear Daddy Letters start screaming, weeping, whimpering, with questions that deserve answers, but the concept of justice seems absurd every single time it isn't served. So like, we just gonna snatch up and incarcerate 570 people out of 599 for marijuana-related offenses in a state that is now legally profiting from the same intent? The same intent that my dear daddy had when he was simply a street vet soldier. Post the war on drugs, which was really just a war on us. Is that the justice we speak of? No. That's simply absurd, appalling. Abolition is an order. Dear Daddy Letters. 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 Dear Daddy Letters expire too. They become demands of legislation and calls for policy change, and it won't just be one or two of us according to the numbers. Dear America's Virginia, this is a direct address to you. Write back soon. Sincerely, a dear daddy's daughter.
Hello, good evening, everyone, and thank you all for being with us this evening. My name is Jasmine Leeward. My pronouns are they and them. Hello, good evening, everyone, and thank you all for being with us this evening. My name is Jasmine Leeward. My pronouns are they and them. I'm an artist and organizer currently based in occupied Powhatan land, also known as Richmond, Virginia. Tonight, we're really excited to continue a conversation with some of the collaborators from Free Our Families, a choreo poem of resistance. which is a project short film that was conceived and produced over the course of the Broadway Advocacy Coalition's Artivism Fellowship this year, which I was a participant in. So tonight we are joined by Christine Wyatt, who is the dancer, choreographer, very brilliant organizer. And we have Janae Thompson, who was the producer, also actor and incredible artist. And the short film was edited by TJ King, who is here with us this evening. So excited. Thanks so much, y'all, for joining us. So I'm going to give a little bit of more overview around the project, and then we're going to just jump into some questions around our process and really the role of storytelling as we continue to resist the violent attacks, specifically around, policing and violence in this moment. So again, this project was created to increase the call to free people from jails and prisons who are locked up for marijuana-related offenses. I work alongside Marijuana Justice as supporting with communications. And I've really been inspired by the work of the organization to create a blueprint for the South to really legalize in a way that gets our people free and gives us resources. So I really want to just go ahead and hop in first to allow folks to introduce themselves before we get into questions. So, Janae, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. So, hi, I'm Janae Thompson. I'm based in the Hampton Roads area. Let's see, I'm an artist, a performer, a creative, and also emerging into the behind the scenes of the camera as a producer.
Thank you, Janae. And TJ, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, how's everybody doing? TJ King. I'm an actor, writer, and director. I mainly specialize in comedy, and I'm based out of Richmond, but I was born and raised in Willingboro, New Jersey. So I have dreams of becoming a big-time comedic writer and director.
Thank you, TJ. Happy to have you. And Christine, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, y'all. I'm Christine. I use she, her pronouns, and sometimes we, us, our. I'm a facilitator of movement experiences, artist, activist, grief doula, and care infrastructure specialist is a new title that I've created for myself.
Awesome. Thanks so much, y'all. It was really incredible to collaborate on this piece with each and every one of you. I also want to give a shout out to Janae LaShawn, who is the poet, who was also a fellow with me in the Broadway Advocacy Coalition. She is based in Michigan and is currently in a show tonight, so was not able to join us. And yes, thank you so much, Janae, for the powerful spoken word piece. And also want to highlight Ramon Brown, who is the voice of the father, beloved son, who we heard from in the beginning of the piece, who's currently incarcerated on marijuana-related offenses in Virginia. Thank you so much. We've been in contact with him to really make sure that this piece gets what it needs to, and that is to get our people free. So we have been really excited to collaborate with all of you. Let's just jump right in to the questions. I think first, initial reactions from the piece from y'all around how it landed with you. And Christine, if you want to go ahead and start.
Yeah, I can start. I think that I've watched it several times, and this last time I really was struck by the language and the imagery and the connection between those two, as well as the juxtaposition. The moment where we see Jasmine's hand along the tree as the possession charge is being described it's a very like poignant moment for me, and a very beautiful like imagery. And also you know, a call to like be like, marijuana is a plant, cannabis is a plant, you know, and really question some of the stigmas and things. You know, I feel like if you're in relationship with marijuana justice, like that's a no-brainer. But especially for other folks who are seeing this, this may be your first time in a marijuana justice kind of space, like, you know, just know that that's a message, you know. So that's one example of the many moments where the poem and the movement really captivated me.
Thank you. Yes, yeah. Janae, did you have any initial reactions or?
After seeing it all put together, I liked it. I enjoyed it. I like seeing how the final works are kind of orchestrated in the end, especially being one of the people that were there while you all were filming and kind of like being on the outside at that moment. I really enjoyed that. I love the space and the atmosphere that we kind of worked in. So I feel like that resonated onto the screen as well. Also, I love how earthy it is, like Christine mentioned, because cannabis is something that grows from our earth. You know, is something that has been, I don't want to say provided for us, but is, you know, provided for us by this earth. And I love how the video really connected with that aspect.
Thank you.
Yay.
Yes. TJ?
Well, being the fact that I edited the project, I had the luxury of watching it multiple times, and each time I watched it, it was like I felt the guy's story because, you know, I think he was incarcerated 9 years so far, you know, for marijuana, which I think is ridiculous, and being the fact that it is becoming legalized in most states is the fact that more prisoners are not being released is, I think, is a crime within itself. So, but I do like how it was shot, the atmosphere. It really spoke. It was like really poetic.
Thank you. Yeah, as we were, oh, go ahead.
So what about yourself? What are your initial reactions? How do you feel about it?
For me, you know, I am a very visual person, so I kind of see things before, and then the work is like trying to create what I've seen. And I think when I heard Ramon's story, it was that kind of juxtaposition of like that freedom that we all should be able to have access to, and that for me is a lot of times in nature, and how that, you know, is really contrasted with Ramon's current experiences as we continue to pray for him to be reunited with his family. Me and Christina have also like just been through a lot together too. So this was our first time collaborating in a dance piece. And so it was really moving to be able to kind of go there and kind of work through and embody that. And I was also really kind of afraid to do this in front of the jail. So we made that choice and it ended up working out. But I think as we also think about what it means to tell stories of resistance, like for me, a lot of times it is placing my body in those spaces where to do that challenging physically, to physically do that challenging. So I was really grateful to be in communication with Ramon through this process. And yeah, I think what TJ did with the piece editing was really incredible as well. And yeah, I'm just grateful. I'm grateful that, you know, the policy work and the experience I've had working closely with marijuana justice, being able to kind of articulate it in my own creative way was really, really special. I'm just glad I'm able to share it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, oh, sorry, Jazz. I'm just
No, go ahead.
You know, I think that your point about like our bodies both being one, embodying, like what does it mean to embody the language, right? It's a choreo poem, right? So what does it mean to embody the language inside of this Dear Daddy Letters poem? And then also, you know, a big theme is place, like how y'all were saying, like, you know, what does it mean for us to you know, embody the grief, frustration, and longing, you know, inside of, you know, a natural landscape. And also, what does it mean for us to take a risk and be in relationship to a jail, or, you know, any kind of
Carceral spaces.
exactly carceral institution. Yeah. So, you know, I think that sometimes I go in and out of like my artist brain. Like sometimes I'm like, why did we do that? Or, you know, I'm like, oh, we did dance in front of a jail. Right. But I think that the you know, I think that the dissonance or the disconnect that we contend with as we witness it, like I feel like that's a really important thing to feel. And intentional, Jazz, on your part. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes. So I it was definitely intentional. And I also, you know, I think like I was saying, want us as storytellers also to be able to hold both, right? How do we hold that grief and that resistance and that rage and that love and joy and peace in the same moment? And so also transitioning and going back and forth from the jail to nature hopefully evokes some of those questions or those feelings of holding both too. So the next question I have for y'all is, you know, we've been in this Commonwealth with marijuana legalized for a while, simple possession. And I just wanted to just get a quick, you know, check-in from y'all on how that has impacted y'all's lives. How has the work of this organization and just living kind of, I don't know if you all partake or, but just even in your friends and family, like what has that been like? Have you felt it? As we talk about like embodied, like I know a lot of times seeing police officers is enough to kind of evoke an internal feeling of anxiety. And I know a lot of people are feeling a different level of freedom, at least knowing that simple legislation is on the books as we continue for the full repeal of the prohibition. So just wanted to check in and see how y'all are feeling in this environment as artists, as storytellers, as just people who may be around the plant. Oh, can't hear you, TJ.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
No, okay, good. I would say I never really partake in marijuana, but I do know people who do it for medicinal purposes. So being the fact that it's now becoming, I guess, legal, I should say, you know, like you mentioned before, like you don't have to have that anxiety when it comes to like dealing with police officers or dealing with law enforcement. So now it gives people, you know, it can be a stress reliever and stuff like that. You never know what somebody's going through. So I think that's a big step. You know, everybody won't have to look over their shoulder. I don't see, and every time I ask people why is marijuana illegal, nobody can really give me the reason why. Like alcohol is illegal, but marijuana isn't, and there's more alcohol-related deaths than there is marijuana. That's just common sense to me. That's not to me even like researching that, so I don't understand why marijuana is illegal in the first place.
Yeah, it's definitely to target Black and brown people through the war on drugs and to make money for the system. And yeah, that is what we are hoping to disrupt. But that we definitely know that the criminality around the plant is really to disrupt Black communities and brown communities. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Johnny, did you want to share?
One thing that I think is very, very interesting, and I'm gonna say this because I know Jasmine mentioned like, oh, you don't have to worry about that question, but I think it's also kind of important, like, how did you get into law? And it's not necessarily about like practicing law, but I feel like as being a Black individual, growing up, there are laws that you are kind of like known to pay attention to. You know what I'm saying? And there's certain ways that we have to maneuver, or different rules that we have to abide by with maneuvering through this life here, especially in Virginia. And I think that's just, it's very sad that the marijuana aspect is one of those things that go into it. Like TJ said, especially for something that is now, legal. Honestly, those people that were incarcerated however many years ago should have been let go, because why are you holding me here? For what reason? But I always just take that into consideration, that there are, I hate to be like different laws for us, but I think we've all grown up knowing that, there's a different way that we have to abide by, and different rules that apply to people of color when it comes to things like this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I do, when we say decarcerate and let people free who are incarcerated for marijuana related offenses, I believe that there should not be people in prison. No one should be in prison. I think we have stronger alternatives to carceral systems that actually keep us safe. The audacity of the state to have people caged for something that is now, on that verge of completely kind of being legal, that is especially egregious. So, and I also, as you were saying, like the different rules, something else that Ramon shared in his story was around how he knows that he was criminalized in a particular way because he was caught in a rural area. Mm-hmm. And we also know, as Black people traveling throughout the South, when you hit rural areas, when there's increased segregation and policing, you are more likely to be targeted and criminalized in ways that may not be the same when you're around your own people in your own communities. And not to say there are Black people in rural areas as well, clearly, but that you're definitely right around us navigating a different set of Black rules in the Commonwealth. So thank you for sharing that.
I will also say, I think sometimes how you mentioning those rural areas, I don't think people always realize that sometimes those rural areas have their own rules and regulations, because it's also part of the Commonwealth that they can operate that particular way. So, again, it's just kind of being cautious of the rules and law, because I've had not necessarily relating to, drugs, but other violations in rural areas. And it's because they have different rules. And then you being someone Black, it's a whole nother situation. So you also kind of, have to be aware about where you're at, about your surroundings and things.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I have two things to say. One being, a part of Ramon's story that is also specifically frustrating is like, he had other charges that also made his sentencing like worse, if you will. But I also
violation.
Yeah. And I think that the subtext, or like the underlying like narrative that's present for me is like, him selling is entrepreneurial spirit, right? And like, when there's other levels of the system that aren't allowing you to make the amount of money that you need to provide for your family, right? Like, the entrepreneurial spirit is finna kick in. And, it's just unfortunate that the policing that we experience as Black people is just so like anti our progression and ascension and liberation. The other thing I was gonna say is really just like expressing gratitude to Marijuana Justice, because my mother was very much like an herbalist, and she was very much like into natural remedies. And so again, like my relationship to cannabis is very similar to my relationship with chamomile and peppermint and lavender and oregano, thyme and all of these other herbs, rosemary. All of those herbs have medicinal purposes that people are aware of. They don't have the same kind of effects that marijuana does. But I think that being able to be in relationship with cannabis, really supports my own bodily autonomy and my own ability to heal myself. And so,
Yes.
yeah.
Thank you. Yes, that's really beautiful. And yes, shout out to Chelsea Hicks Wise, who had the vision and courage to start this organization in 2019. We are very grateful. And yeah, it's our birthright, these plants that have been criminalized and taken away from us.
Right.
Again, as Janae was saying as well, they're gifts from the earth. And so how are we approaching it as such and rejecting the criminality that has been placed on it and created a narrative around it that is just what it is, right? So we will continue the struggle, absolutely. My next question is, what do you feel like the role is of storytelling in this moment of, sustains grief, especially for Black people, as we continue to resist the violent systems we're up against and seek joy? What is the role of art? Like, why do you do what you do?
I would say the most important key factor is to bring awareness. You never know what somebody's going through or just anything that's out there. Like, I just found out that California is now, marijuana is legal for recreational use and medicinal purposes. And when I went to Cali last year, they had like during the strip in LA, they had a whole bunch of marijuana. So you just go in, pick everybody, customer service, pick your poison, all that. And now you got people still locked up for marijuana purposes. So I think the main factor is just to bring awareness, because editing the documentary, there's some things that I didn't know.
Awesome. And TJ, could you also speak to really quickly just why you do what you do, period, as an artist? Like, we know if you choose to be here, it's usually not an easy road. So what makes you continue doing what you do, even in comedy?
Well, I like doing comedy because I just like to laugh, like to make people laugh, and laughter is the best medicine to me. So I like to entertain people, and then I also like to deviate other aspects. So this was like the first type of documentary that I did partake in. So also not only entertain but educate.
Thank you. Anybody want to go next?
I just want to say something about you, TJ, real quick, that I think a really cool connection with like comedy and things that you do is comedy is also connected to marijuana because it's such a part of that culture, like the comedic aspect. And, something that while you're trying to relieve yourself, you have something that's enjoyable to watch. So I feel like, that always go hand in hand with, different stories that we've watched in media and some of our, classic films that feature, weed, and they are hilarious because, that aspect just kind of all goes together with making you feel good and, having that sense of release with something like you mentioned, something could be going on in your life, but you have this at the end of the day that you can just, unwind and relax to. So I think that's a cool connection with the things that you do. And I'm not sure if you're aware of like how many people that are involved in the cannabis culture that watch your content, but I think that's a little special nugget that you can always kind of, cherish.
Yeah, a lot of comedians, they talk about like from Cat Williams, Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle got a movie called Have Faith, and I'm just thinking like, when did marijuana even ever hurt somebody? Like, you never heard somebody going to drug wars over marijuana, people dying over marijuana overdoses. It's always like heroin, meth, cocaine, stuff like that. I don't know. It's just the whole situation seems weird to me.
Yeah, you're definitely seeking to also decriminalize all drugs because they all are rooted in the earth. But for sure,
even cigarettes, like you go to the store and buy cigarettes, it tells you on the label this can cause cancer. And they make money, tax that, and make money off of that. But you can't
Absolutely.
have a store where they sell marijuana. It just, this causes a stress reliever. I don't know. It's just weird to me.
Well, in regards to myself, how I feel like art plays a role in resistance. First, I feel like it is our obligation as people of color, as women, as individuals, as minorities, or wherever you see yourself in the world. It's our responsibility to tell stories, to tell stories that are truthful within who you are as a person, so that even if you're just educating like those around you, so other people are aware of what's happening, because I feel like there's so much lack of awareness sometimes in the world of what other people are going through. So I feel like it's important that we tell these stories. And I guess for the most part, our medium to tell stories is through film, is through dance, is through some type of performing arts. Again, another way to kind of relieve yourself. But I definitely feel like it's our obligation to continue to tell stories in the world that we are living in, to educate, to inform, to make people feel good. And I also feel like it's important that we have that representation as well, because so often people don't see that of themselves. So I guess, again, going back to, our responsibility to tell these stories and to educate people.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the biggest thing for me as an artist, mover, and storyteller, the biggest motivator is knowing that our history, or rather like the history that's taught in schools, the history that's widely shared, and the news, present day news, the narratives are not always shaped by us. And so, what does it mean to actually archive an experience? And I agree with Janae, like it is we do have an obligation to archive our stories, archive the truth, if you will, and be a truth teller through our art making, and through the like intersectionalities of the way that our art practice and other people's art practice meet, and our interests and passions meet. And that's why I'm super grateful for you, Jazz, that we both have a shared movement practice and also a passion for, abolition. And so what does it mean to be an artist, and to like, tell the stories that need to be heard in a context that makes people think differently about marijuana, or differently about whatever it is, differently about abolition. Yeah, I definitely feel that from watching the film. What's the other question?
Yeah, no, that was it. What there was.
That was why I do what I do. Maybe I
Yes.
answered already.
Yeah.
Anyways,
I
I think the only thing I want to add is that I feel like we talked about our relationship to these herbs, like and specifically our access and relationship to cannabis being our birthright. And I think that themes that also came up in what Jana and TJ shared is also our birthright to joy and pleasure, as well as embodied liberation. And so I feel like dance and movement is a gateway to understanding what that is and what that means, and also and also a representation of what it can look like for you to process the grief that comes with contending with the pain and the harm that's been done to us, present day and in the past. So movement is always my go-to healing modality, in addition to my relationship with herbs. So Yeah.
Yes, thank y'all so much for sharing. I feel that deeply. For me, I do want to pull up kind of two of my artist anchors, which is Octavia Butler and Toni Morrison. Octavia has this quote about art, storytelling, where she says, "Tell stories filled with facts, make people touch and taste and know, make people feel, feel, feel." She hand wrote it on one of her journals, and that really is an anchor for me as well, because I feel like my purpose is not necessarily to make people feel a specific way, but to tap into that feeling and emotion and feel however, the art and the story makes you feel. And I think that really challenges the numbness that we're kind of expected to live under as Black people for survival. I don't think, that numbness serves us. So I do try to create in ways that are visceral, that do make people feel. And then as far as like applying policy and just our conditions to my work, Toni Morrison has this quote that says, "The past is already changing as it is being re-examined, and it is being listened to for deeper resonances. Actually, it can be more liberating than any imagined future if you are willing to identify its evasions, its distortions, its lies, and are willing to unleash its secrets." So I think the secret is out that marijuana should have never been criminalized, right? And that we should have never been caged for it. And I think continuing to amplify those and put the onus on the state as the violent actor is also kind of why I do what I do as well. And this is my first piece doing movement. And so that was really special for me as well, because sometimes that is my best way to communicate. Sometimes words don't do it. And so being able to have movement along with Janae's poem, and to just really just allow my body to kind of tell the story as well, is something I'm hoping to continue in my art making practice. So I think as we're kind of closing up here, I have two more questions, but the next one is really like, as Black creators in this moment, as Black artists, Black people who center abolition, like what advice do you have, or words of encouragement, support to other creators who are telling our stories right now? And I'm happy to, go ahead. Did you want to go first?
No, you got it.
Well, I want to encourage artists to rest, especially in the US. This is not a climate that is built for us to thrive. It kind of will make you feel inadequate. And the support is not there for us. We get, Juneteenth ice cream and the whole nine, but we don't actually get the support. So I think resting is really important for us, because oftentimes we have to overwork ourselves to overcompensate for a system that hates us. So we have to continue to rest. And Tino's as well, like find that space to grieve. Use your art as your grieving practice, and you don't have to share it with people, but create that space for yourself. I will also say, just like find your people. I think being an artist in isolation is really challenging, and not, especially as Black people, like connect with your people and grieve with your people as well. And just continue to challenge, especially as artists who are working in an art world dominated by whiteness. Like, how are we creating our own systems for ourselves, even as artists, to be able to create our own opportunities to tell the stories that we know need to be told? I will pass along to whoever's got next.
Let's see. I think a word of advice I would be, first, tell stories that are true to you, or anything that you do. Participate in things that are true to you, things that resonate well with you, that you feel strongly about, that you have a passion for. Because I feel like when you're operating in that, everything else in a way kind of come easy. It's going to be hardship, but when you're, operating in your truth, it's going to be an easy sailing. You're going to figure out how to get things done when things get hard. It's all going to eventually gel together. So I think always just kind of operating in your truth, participating in things that resonate with you positively, and being yourself. I think another thing, this kind of goes in regards to, I guess, the rest aspect. Because like Jasmine mentioned, this world will make you feel like, you ain't it. And that you gotta grind, work twice as hard, especially being Black or someone of color. You definitely got to work twice as hard to be good as this person. And I think always remembering that you are enough. You're enough just how you are right now in this instance. You are enough. You can always work on yourself. You can always improve, but just realize that the things that you're doing, you're good enough, and, believe in yourself.
Amen. Ashe.
Both of y'all made good points. I would say believe in yourself, and I would say also take some rest because you can get burned out. I've been burned out a few times trying to keep up, with the Joneses and stuff like that. And another thing, I know it sounds cliche, but just never give up when you dream. If you have a vision, you want to protect it and just strive for it. And always try to perfect your craft. You never know when your opportunity will come.
Yeah, I would say, to really stay grounded in your practice and in your values, right? So, and if you don't know what that means, like if you're like, what is a practice? What do you mean values, right? Like really do some digging to really know what motivates you as an artist, and what motivates you as a storyteller and a change maker and a truth teller. So yeah, having clarity around the values that motivate you and having a practice, and like Jasmine said, a community, folks to hold you like in your practice, folks who can be in relationship to the kind of art that you're making, the kind of things that you're exploring, your craft, as TJ said, what you are excavating from within yourself, just continuing to be rooted in that, and let that process inform, your choices. It'll tell you when it's time to rest. You'll feel it in your body, right? Or in your spirit. Yeah, and I have advice for people who know artists, right? Like Jazz said, the support really isn't there. So, if you know an artist, be in support of that artist. If you are in relationship to artists, if you are a gatekeeper to a space or resources or whatever, like make that available to the artists that you know. So yeah, that's my advice.
Word. Thank you. Sage wisdom, y'all. Thank y'all so much for sharing. My next question is there any person or things you've studied that have been pivotal to your journey as an artist, if that makes sense? Like any body of work, person, or opportunity or piece you did that really was gave you more clarity as a Black creator?
I would say for me, my biggest inspiration probably Martin Lawrence. Just the way his mannerisms and stuff like that. I consider myself a goofy person, and when it comes to more directorial side, like a Spike Lee, just like his cinematography, the way he shoots and stuff like that. And I'm always going online and even just small time creators like content creators on social media. And you can learn from anybody. They got different aspects that you can learn with how they shoot this stuff, how they how he or she acts or stuff like that. And another thing I wanted to mention is somebody's always watching you. So don't think just if you put out a video and you don't get a million views, don't think it was a failure. Somebody's always watching. You just never know.
Mm-hmm.
Truly, truly.
Yeah, I would say that some art makers and movement practitioners who really radicalized me in my art practice would have to be Urban Bush Woman. It's a dance company, Urban Bush Woman, as well as Angela's Pulse, Paloma McGregor, and also a dear friend and mentor of mine, MK Abedu. I did the Summer Leadership Institute in probably 2017, I think, with Urban Bush Woman, and that was a beautiful experience. It was artists and it was also cultural workers, teachers, and also my experience with the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond. Those folks really radicalized me in my practice. And then also my peers who sort of like keep me accountable in my endeavors. A good friend of mine, Paris Cyan, you can follow them on Instagram. Jasmine Hearn. I'm just name dropping now, but
you got a whole tribe.
I do have a whole tribe of folks who really are about it. Also the Dance Union and the Dance Union podcast. It's a podcast that I'm a part of. We're a collective of dance artists who have real conversations about the dance world and the container that it's in. So yeah, good stuff.
Thank you for sharing.
Let's see. I think one thing, I guess in a way I'm inspired by them. But I always think of Spoken Reasons, and it's funny because me and Justin were talking about this yesterday. I think of Spoken Reasons when he had that quote, the faith, the hard work, and the consistency. That is one thing that I feel like always kind of like journeys with me when I'm working on things or when I'm in, different situations or on productions and things like that. That faith, the hard work, and the consistency, making sure that you have those three elements in everything that you do, along with, telling the truth and doing things that are truthful and resonate with you. I feel like artists that I feel really kind of exudes that is like Angela Bassett. She don't necessarily get the applause that she deserves or the Oscars that she deserves, but she has played multiple people in history, and the fact that she is telling our truth, that is something that resonates with me, because as an artist, I really don't want to, or really do not prefer to work on projects that are outside of the Black experience. And the fact that majority of her root is rooted in authenticity of these historical figures or things that are, very relevant to the Black experience is something that I really admire. And she has been able to retain a successful, career by doing those things. And that's probably also the reason why she don't have an Oscar, because most of her work is, Black work, and, they don't want to applaud that for real. But that's someone that I truly admire. And like I said, majority of her work is things that are rooted within the Black experience.
Awesome. Yes. Hopefully Angela gets her flowers one day.
She's been our whole history book, y'all.
Come
our
on.
whole entire history book.
Every one of them. So for me, as I named, just like Toni Morrison and her critique on the state and violence has really been pivotal to my political analysis. Jatavia Gary is a filmmaker that really radicalized me as well, and just experimental filmmaking in particular. a Black queer woman who has held these conversations around the state in ways that, include her physically, and contextualize history in a way that is abstract and also just really strikes and creates that feeling. She has a project called the Givenry Document that was really pivotal to me, as well as Ming Smith, who's actually a photographer. She was one of the photographers in a group called Kamoinge, which was a Black photography group during the 1960s and the Black Power movement. And they focused on Black life and Black experiences, like outside of the conversation of the civil rights movement, right? So like the day-to-day and the mundane. Because as an artist, I'm really intrigued by and try to look into the mundane and the day-to-day as a place of exploration to know ourselves better. And so I'm really struck by her images as well. And definitely my peers, like Janae, I went to Performing Arts High School at Governor School with Janae. And yeah, as Christine was saying, like I'm really inspired by the work of my peers and just like the courage and that tenacity to keep going. And to even claim your role as an artist, I get from my friends. Christine too, like my dance practice is only like recently restarted after like a long lull, and just being around people who center movement has been inspiring to me. So thanks, y'all. And we are wrapping up now. If we could just, I'm really, really glad y'all could join us this evening. I hope you all enjoyed the short film. If you could just let us know where we can keep in touch with you on the internet.
You can follow me on all social media at Hail TJ King, HAIL TJKING. That's TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and big things coming this year. So,
hey. Yes, thank you.
You can find me at _pretty_life, life with 2 E's on Instagram.
Yes.
Yeah. Y'all can follow me on Instagram at teen.lore. So TINETINE.LORE. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I'm Jasmine Lieber on most things. I just also want to give a shout out to Ryan Harris, who is our cinematographer. And again, just name everyone else. Janae Thompson, who is our producer. Christine Wyatt, who's a dance artist and a choreographer. Ramon Brown, as well as Theodore Bright Jr., who edited this piece for us. Thank y'all so much for joining.
Okay, well, that was such an amazing conversation. I just want to say thank you again to Christine Wyatt, Janae Thompson, TJ King, as well as to Janae LaShawn. And then, of course, just a big, big thank you to the director of the film, Free Our Families, a choreo program of resistance, Jasmine Leeward. Please continue to show the film, pass it along. You can find it on our platforms, and we'll share more. Make sure you are subscribed to our Marijuana Justice email list, and you can easily access that. If there are any questions or anything that you want to drop in the comments, but we are wrapping up for the day. Thank you so much for staying with us and for hearing our thoughts. We will be right back here next month in July, and we're really excited to invite our friends from Washington, D.C. that are championing a campaign about decrimming poverty. So join us next month. And my name is Chelsea Higgs Wise, and thanks so much for being here. Bye, y'all.